One of my all-time favourite parts of a 4X game is exploring and fighting in the seas, the ocean gameplay. And unfortunately, it's something that, perhaps with a few exceptions like this one, is rarely done well. Can Civilization 7 do it? Let's dive into the big changes, as well as some of the lesser-known updates to Civilization 7's naval gameplay. With my thanks to Star Trek Fleet Command for sponsoring a section of this video, more on that later. First off, we have to start with the new resources and trade that the exploration age and obviously the seas unlock. And while this won't be the only thing you'll discover as you finally are able to enter deep ocean tiles, like beautiful wonders here for example, the resources are really pivotal. And the exploration age introduces a new type of resource, building on top of the foundations that the basic ones lay. As a brief reminder, of course, you'll generally get some happiness, as well as some base yield. In this case, the dyes give some food, money, and culture. However, this new type of resource, a treasure resource, becomes available in the exploration age exclusively, perhaps to it, with this treasure fleet mechanic. Take a look at the Cocoa. It provides production in gold and science, a little bit of happiness as well, but crucially it has that subtext, that little description underneath, creates treasure fleets when connected to a coastal settlement. So two conditions there. Firstly, we're going to need to build a new coastal settlement near this and obviously connect up the resource. Once we do that, treasure fleets will start to automatically be created in the city, produced over time as we connect the treasure resources. And now you're thinking, well, what's a treasure fleet? Well, that's a very good question. Let's move on to part 2, Piracy and treasure fleets in Civilization 7. This is a treasure fleet, and as I mentioned just before, it's automatically produced in coastal settlements where you have access to those treasure resources. You'll need to defend these fleets, and you'll thankfully also be able to control them. They are not automatic. While their production may be automated, their control, how you navigate around the map, is entirely up to you. And of course, your enemies can pillage, can steal these treasure fleets. That's where the piracy part comes in. So not only do you need to focus on producing them, but also then transporting them back to the mainland, back home. Bring the treasure, bring the fleet and the points, the victory points, more on those later, that it brings with it, as well as of course a lump sum of gold. It is a treasure fleet after all. There's plenty more to discover in the seas outside of these ships, but first, from the seas to the skies to the deep, vast space above, Star Trek Fleet Command is the sponsor of today's video. In this strategy game, you'll embark on missions across the Star Trek universe, recruiting its legendary characters and crewing its iconic ships. Playing seamlessly across both PC and mobile. Use my link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen to download the game completely for free. Now's the perfect time to jump in as they celebrate their 6-year anniversary with the new Q Continuum event. 3 new offices, new independent archives building, chaos technology, and much more. I love that there's always something interesting to do in Star Trek Fleet Command and in real time, simultaneously working on customizing my ships to send into the fight, upgrading my base buildings, increasing production, and working through the many research trees. Be sure to log in every day to receive the many daily rewards like these in the build-up to the epic Romulan Captain Nero reward. And there's more. Using the promo code CRUSHES, you'll get 2 full officer unlocks and a full unlock of the Jellyfish upon reaching Ops level 18, all for free, for anyone who claims it. Running through until the 15th of January 2025, with the Jellyfish bundle live a week after that. So, with the galaxy in need of a leader, will you answer the call? Use my link in the description below or the QR code handily on screen to download Star Trek Fleet Command and play completely for free today. And as you do that, you'll need to be careful as you navigate the hazards that the exploration age introduces. Crucially, there are 2. The first one, take a look at these 3 ships, some civilian, some military, that all take damage from rough seas. That's because if you don't have the required technologies unlocked, not just to access deep ocean, but then to access it safely, then you will take damage per turn while you're in deep ocean, making exploration a little bit more difficult. Building on top of that, there'll also be some form of natural disaster here. You can see one playing out in this little YouTube short that will also damage your ships, and this one perhaps a little bit more random and maybe more difficult to control outside of the technologies that you'll unlock. Finally, as you navigate these hazards, there will of course be some very real hazards outside of the natural ones, the enemy. We've talked about already piracy and the need to defend your treasure fleets if you want to build up those victory points, but what about the actual fight? Well, the fleet commander and its special orders will probably be crucial to your military strategy at sea. The fleet commander works a lot like the army commander, but obviously it's a boat and it's in the ocean. How does it work specifically? Let's talk about a few key highlights. First up, the assemble army function that you can see here allows you to pack up ships nearby. Crucially, unlike Civ 6, it doesn't need to be the same ship that you're building together to build a fleet or an armada. As you can see here, replaying it again, it just hoovers up ships within, by default, a 1-tile radius, and you can then control them all as they bang and crash into each other. These ginormous things at sea. Maybe just slightly too big. I don't know, the clipping, not really my thing, but I love the commanders more broadly. Why? Well, it's not just the stack. They also have these two functions. There's a coordinated naval attack option for the ships within your fleet's command, as well as a barrage land target option. And things get even more spicy the deeper we delve into some of these extra functions. And the promotions too, oh my god. But first, coordinated naval attack and barrage land target work essentially the same way. +1 combat strength for all of the units involved, and you shoot either a naval target or a land-based target, all in one, making it just that little bit easier than it might have been before. Fleet commanders also receive experience like army commanders, and you can promote them. +2 unit slots, and land units can pack into the commander. For example, is a promotion within logistics. We've seen a lot more of the bombardment promotions, these ones, as you can imagine, about bombarding the enemy, about strength, +3 combat strength, +1 ranged attack distance for naval units within the command radius, generally 1 tile, but can be improved, of the fleet commander. And finally, quite possibly my favorite one, the gunfire support. If you've seen my one other video about the naval gameplay in Civ 7, I'll keep this brief, but essentially, naval units within the radius have a splash ability to their attacks. Enemy units in tile range adjacent to the target, next door to it, take 50% of the damage. They take half the damage done again, right? Deal 100 damage to a main ship, you'll deal 50 damage to the ships around it. And it gets better. Make your way through one of these trees like the bombardment tree, and you'll also get commendation points to spend on extra benefits like this one-off attack that cannot be responded to, the duty effect. My goodness, naval commanders, they're big. And they might just lead to victory. There are 2 types, actually, and I'll keep this brief. Firstly, the economic victory pathway, unlocking points for you to spend in a future age, the final age, of course. Here you can see it's about those treasure fleets. You need to get 30 treasure fleet points from returning from distant land adventures, bringing those treasures back. The economic victory, therefore, obviously relies on the sea. You need to get the appropriate technologies, cartography, astronomy, get those treasure resources that we talked about at the start of the video, and bring them back safely from distant lands to your homeland. And we'll talk a bit more about that actually right now as we move through transition into the other part of the victory process in the exploration age that's tied to the seas, the military victory and distant lands. Here, of course, militarism will be a little bit more of a focus, and there was some confusion when I mentioned this briefly in my last video, so I'm going to focus in on it here and explain it to you as succinctly and smoothly as possible. This pathway, the military pathway, requires you to collect points from settlements in distant lands. You'll get 1 point for each settlement that you settle, but this is doubled if you conquer it from an enemy. So you'll get 2 points if you steal a settlement, and that's doubled yet again, up to a total possible amount of 4 points if that settlement follows your religion. And you can mix and match those. So it can be a settlement in a distant land, and here's what that looks like. Essentially, it's a different continent, right? Move across the seas, find a distant land. You can capture a settlement there from an enemy to get 2 points. You can build a settlement there for a point. You can capture a settlement from an enemy that already follows your religion for 4 points. and you need to get 12 in total. That's how the military victory works through the seas in, of course, the Second Age. Moving through to point number 7, a very brief one, Oceanic Discoveries. As you're plotting your path, building your treasure fleets, whatever it may be, you'll also find these little things at sea, these little sort of goody huts at sea. They obviously trigger narrative events, something that Civilization 7 is trying to do better than its predecessors. Some of these that we've seen have been very strong, some of them not so much. And of course they're tied more broadly into that overarching narrative event system that hopefully will make the game a little bit more dynamic. Another notable change, actually adjacent to the seas, it's coastal living and money making. Loads of adjacencies, bonuses, and buildings and all that kind of thing have changed in Civ 7, and so as you settle these coastal settlements, you need to keep that in mind. Have a listen.
And this is a great example. You can see that this is like the waterfront for our capital city. This is going to be a great place for all those markets and anyone selling their wares coming in from goods. So that's why we've chosen the adjacency bonus of coastal tiles given adjacency to all of the gold-based buildings.
Right.
And that's also why in the previous age this was a great place to put a market, but now we're going to upgrade it to basically the new age building. It's still going to be in that same sort of classification of buildings of the gold producing buildings, but we want that bazaar because the bazaar is going to turn on those adjacencies.
So, gold adjacencies turned on by economic buildings along the coastline is basically that point in a nutshell. Our penultimate point, excess happiness and government bonuses, and this one is very brief but important. As you produce global happiness and pick a type of government, feudal monarchy, plutocracy, theocracy, you'll unlock specific bonuses. Here you can see we love the King Day, or we love the Monarch Day in Civ 7. Essentially, your extra happiness builds up. Once it reaches a certain point, you get this reward, depending on your government type, and some of them affect ships. And finally, speaking of technologies, rewards, let's briefly talk about the tech tree and specialization. As I mentioned earlier, you'll need technologies like cartography to actually even just enter the deep ocean tiles. So none of this will be unlocked until you can start to get those online. Likewise, the culture tree will also have important impacts on trade, resources, your ships, and your unique unlocks too. When we look at the technology tree, there's also that mastery element that we talked about in my video dedicated to technology and culture. With shipbuilding, of course, you'll unlock the shipyard and allow naval units to safely travel across the deep ocean without taking damage. Mastery will give them +3 combat strength and allow land units to also enter deep ocean. What is mastery? Well, again, quickly in a nutshell, you're essentially researching the technology twice, becoming a master in it. The opportunity cost, of course, is that you're not researching something else. This will be very important for naval-focused empires and obviously for the exploration age more broadly. Thank you very much for joining me today, taking a look at my top 10 changes to the seas in Civilization 7's exploration age. And thanks again to Star Trek Fleet Command for sponsoring this video. You can, of course, check it out using my link in the description down below. Thank you for watching. See you next time.